Miss Marple had always disliked afternoons that arrived too quietly. They gave people time to rehearse themselves. The village of Alderwick-on-Avon lay under a thin spring sun, its lanes drowsy, its hedges already whispering. Miss Marple paused at the garden gate of Rosehaven House, her gloved hand resting lightly on the latch. The house had been shut for 3 years, ever since Mrs. Violet Harcourt's sudden departure to live with relatives in Bath. That was the official version, at any rate. The gate creaked. Miss Marple noted it. Inside, the garden had been tidied too thoroughly. No fallen leaves, no weeds, a care that suggested not affection, but anxiety. The house itself smelled faintly of polish and lavender, an old smell, carefully preserved. Miss Marple was greeted by Miss Clara Dent, Violet Harcourt's former companion, a thin woman, precise. Everything about her looked arranged. "Thank you for coming, Miss Marple," she said. "It's all very distressing." "Yes," Miss Marple replied gently. "Distress has a way of lingering." They sat in the drawing-room. Tea arrived promptly. Miss Marple noticed the cups had been set out before the kettle boiled. "Mrs. Harcourt was unwell," Miss Dent began. "Fragile nerves, memory troubles. And yet," Miss Marple said mildly, "she managed her accounts perfectly until a week she disappeared." Miss Dent's smile tightened. "She trusted me with practical matters." People often did, Miss Marple thought, until they no longer could. Miss Dent folded her hands. "The police say there's no evidence of foul play." Miss Marple stirred her tea. It was already too cool. Outside, a bird struck the window sharply, then flew away. Miss Marple did not drink. Miss Marple stayed the night. Rosehaven House made sounds after dark, polite ones, with settling, curtains breathing, the kind of noises people ignored when they wished to believe nothing was wrong. At precisely 10:30, Miss Dent passed Miss Marple's door. Her footsteps were measured, practiced. In the morning, breakfast was served exactly as it had been, Miss Dent said, when Mrs. Harcourt was still herself. Toast cut thin, marmalade aligned with the spoon, tea poured first, then milk. Miss Marple watched. Mrs. Harcourt always drank 2 cups, Miss Dent added. Never more, never less. And on the last day, Miss Marple asked. Miss Dent hesitated. She seemed tired. I insisted she rest. Insistence, Miss Marple noted, often replaced permission quietly. Later, Miss Marple examined the upstairs room. The bed was made, the wardrobe emptied. Too clean, no confusion, no abandoned objects. A life rarely left so neatly. At the mantel stood a photograph of Violet Harcourt, elegant, sharp-eyed, alert, a woman accustomed to deciding for herself. Miss Marple touched the frame. The glass was dusty everywhere except the corners. Someone had handled it often. The village remembered Violet Harcourt selectively. She was forgetful, one neighbor said. Sharp as ever, said another. She relied on Miss Dent completely. She argued with her terribly. Miss Marple listened. People adjusted memory the way they adjusted furniture, to make space for comfort. At the post office, Miss Marple learned that Violet Harcourt had withdrawn a large sum of money 3 days before vanishing. At the chemist, she learned something else. Miss Dent had been purchasing sleeping draughts regularly, mild ones, legal, unremarkable, just to help her rest, Miss Dent had explained. Miss Marple returned to Rosehaven House that afternoon. Tea was served again. Miss Dent watched the cup as Miss Marple lifted it. "Is something wrong?" she asked quickly. "No," Miss Marple replied. "Only that it smells familiar." Miss Dent stiffened. Miss Marple set the cup down untouched. That night, she slept lightly. At 2:15, she heard a cupboard open. At 2:16, it closed again. At 2:17, silence. The inspector arrived the next morning. Polite, efficient, thoroughly reassured. "No body," he said. "No crime." Miss Marple nodded. "Of course." They toured the house together. Miss Dent spoke calmly, consistently, almost rehearsed. She was confused, she said. She agreed to go. "And packed nothing?" Miss Marple asked. "She trusted me." Trust again. In the kitchen, Miss Marple noticed the cupboard. The hinges were newly oiled. "Miss Dent," she said gently, "how long did Mrs. Harcourt take the drafts?" "Months." "And yet," Miss Marple replied, "the bottle was replaced last week." Miss Dent's breath caught, only slightly. "Routine," she said quickly. "I like routine." Miss Marple smiled faintly. So did many people who wished to remain unseen. That afternoon, Miss Marple asked for tea one final time. Miss Dent prepared herself. Her hands trembled just once. Miss Marple watched the liquid darken. Did Violet Harcourt ever refuse her tea? Miss Marple asked. "No," Miss Dent said softly. "She trusted me." "Exactly," Miss Marple replied. The inspector listened now. Miss Marple spoke calmly. The drafts had not killed Violet Harcourt. They had made her obedient, confused, easier to persuade, easier to move. The withdrawal, the disappearance, the tidy room. Miss Dent's voice broke. "I only wanted peace," she whispered. "Peace," Miss Marple said gently, "is often what people call silence." Violet Harcourt was found 2 days later, alive, sedated, hidden in a private nursing home under another name. Miss Dent did not resist arrest. Miss Marple declined tea before leaving Rosehaven House. Outside, spring had continued quite normally. People passed. Birds sang. Life resumed its habits. As Miss Marple walked away, she reflected, not for the first time, that the most dangerous crimes were not committed in anger. They were committed politely, carefully, with tea served at exactly the right temperature.